Have you ever wondered why some people command respect the moment they enter a room while others are ignored no matter how hard they try? Have you ever thought about the invisible force that makes certain individuals seem destined for greatness while others fade into the background? This video will fundamentally change how you see status, respect, and the dark art of creating authority through sheer force of presence. By the end of this journey, you will understand one of the most powerful truths about human social dynamics. People will treat you according to how you treat yourself, and if you act like royalty, the world will bow. The ancient world understood this principle with crystalline clarity. Kings and queens didn't just inherit their authority. They performed it. They carried themselves with an unmistakable air of superiority. They wore crowns and robes not because they needed protection from the elements but because these symbols reinforced the fantasy of their divine right to rule. They spoke with certainty and moved with deliberate grace. They created an aura of specialness that made others instinctively defer to them. This wasn't natural. This was learned behavior, carefully cultivated and ruthlessly maintained. This is Law 34 from the 48 Laws of Power, and it might be the most transformative principle you will ever encounter. Because unlike laws that require wealth, connections, or circumstances beyond your control, this law requires only one thing: the courage to believe you deserve respect and the discipline to embody that belief in everything you do. This is the law of self-created monarchy. This is how peasants become princes and nobodies become somebodies through nothing more than how they carry themselves through the world. Let me tell you a story that will illuminate the depths of what we're exploring today. In the 1960s, a man named David Hampton discovered this law accidentally and used it to infiltrate the highest levels of New York society. Hampton was nobody. He was a young black man with no money, no connections, no credentials. But he had audacity. He started telling people he was Sidney Poitier's son. He dressed impeccably. He carried himself with absolute confidence. He spoke as though he belonged in every space he entered. And an amazing thing happened: people believed him. Hampton talked his way into exclusive clubs, expensive restaurants, and the homes of wealthy art dealers. He convinced them to give him money, lodging, and introductions to even more powerful people. His scam eventually unraveled, but for months he lived like royalty purely through the power of acting like royalty. He had nothing except the performance of having everything. And that performance was enough. The world saw what he projected, not what he actually was. His story inspired the play and film 6 Degrees of Separation. But the real lesson isn't about deception. It's about the power of self-presentation. Now here's the twist that will sound arrogant but is absolutely true: the world judges you primarily on how you judge yourself. If you carry yourself like you're special, people will assume you are special. If you act like you deserve respect, people will respect you. If you behave like you belong at the highest levels, doors will open that should logically remain closed. This isn't fair. This isn't meritocracy. This is human psychology. We're social primates who use shortcuts to determine status and hierarchy. And the biggest shortcut is, we believe what people show us about themselves. Think about your own life. When you meet someone new, how do you assess them? You notice how they carry themselves, how they speak, how they dress, whether they make eye contact, whether their handshake is firm or weak, whether they apologize constantly or state their views confidently. Within seconds, you've made judgments about their status, competence, and worthiness of respect. You're not analyzing their resume or checking their credentials. You're reading signals. And if those signals say, "I am important," you treat them as important. If those signals say, "I am nobody," you dismiss them. This is not conscious. This is automatic. Human brains are pattern recognition machines optimized for rapid social assessment. In ancestral environments, quickly identifying who had high status and who didn't was crucial for survival. Defer to the wrong person and you might get hurt. Disrespect a powerful person and you might get killed. So we evolved to read status signals instantly and respond accordingly. This machinery still operates in modern contexts where it's often inappropriate. But it operates nonetheless. And whoever understands this controls how others perceive and treat them. Let's bring this into the modern world, because Law 34 is more relevant today than ever before. Consider how tech entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk commanded authority. Neither was born into wealth or power, but both carried themselves with absolute certainty. Jobs wore the same outfit every day, not out of laziness but as a power move that said, "I am beyond caring about conventional fashion because I am creating the future." Musk makes outrageous claims about colonizing Mars and tweets whatever he wants because he operates from a frame of being untouchable. They act like kings, and the world treats them accordingly. Or look at how Anna Delvey, the fake heiress, scammed New York's elite. She was a working-class Russian immigrant with no money. But she dressed in designer clothes, stayed at expensive hotels, tipped extravagantly, and acted with the casual entitlement of someone with unlimited wealth. Banks gave her loans. Hotels gave her credit. Wealthy people gave her their time and money. All based on the performance of being wealthy. She created reality through projection. When she finally couldn't pay her bills and the illusion collapsed, people were shocked. But they shouldn't have been. They had been responding to her act, not her reality. Now let me explain this through an analogy that will make everything crystal clear. Think about method actors. When an actor like Daniel Day-Lewis prepares for a role, he doesn't just memorize lines. He becomes the character. He adopts their posture, voice, mannerisms, psychology. He inhabits the role so completely that his body and mind actually change. Other actors respond to him as the character, not as Daniel Day-Lewis. The performance becomes real through its own conviction. This is what Law 34 requires: method acting your own life. You don't pretend to be royal. You become royal in your own mind first, then let that internal reality shape your external presentation. The actor who's pretending is easy to spot because they're disconnected from their performance. The actor who has become the character is compelling because there's no gap between internal and external. Similarly, the person who's faking confidence is transparent. But the person who genuinely believes in their own worth and lets that belief permeate everything they do is magnetic. Here's where we need to understand the psychological mechanism that makes this work. Humans have something called the self-fulfilling prophecy. When you expect to be treated a certain way, you unconsciously behave in ways that elicit that treatment. If you expect to be dismissed, you'll be tentative, apologetic, and invisible. People will dismiss you, confirming your expectation. If you expect to be respected, you'll be direct, confident, and present. People will respect you, again confirming your expectation. The prophecy fulfills itself because your expectations shape your behavior, which shapes others' responses, which reinforces your expectations. The masters of Law 34 break this cycle deliberately. They decide how they want to be treated, then act as though that treatment is already happening. They're not waiting for the world to grant them status. They're claiming it unilaterally and daring the world to contradict them. And most of the time, the world doesn't contradict them. Because most people are followers who take their cues from confident leaders. If you act like you're in charge, most people will accept that you are. Let's examine a historical example that perfectly illustrates this principle in all its audacity. Napoleon Bonaparte was a short Corsican from a minor noble family with no real claim to power. But he carried himself like an emperor before he became one. He spoke with absolute certainty. He made sweeping gestures. He had himself painted in heroic poses. He created a mythology around himself of destiny and greatness. And people believed it. He rose from artillery captain to emperor of France through military genius, yes, but also through sheer force of self-presentation. He acted like he was meant to rule, and eventually, he did rule. Napoleon understood something crucial: authority is largely theatrical. The person who can perform authority most convincingly has it. This is why he spent enormous resources on propaganda, on spectacle, on crafting his image. He wasn't being vain. He was being strategic. He knew that maintaining power required maintaining the performance of power. The moment he appeared weak or uncertain, his authority would crumble. So he never appeared weak or uncertain, even when he was. The performance was everything. Now let's fast forward to the modern corporate world, because this same principle operates in every workplace on Earth. Consider how people get promoted. It's rarely the most competent person. It's the person who acts like they're already at the next level. They speak in meetings with confidence. They make decisions without excessive deference. They dress like senior people dress. They carry themselves like leaders. And because they're already performing the role, promoting them feels natural. They're not asking permission to be a leader. They're already leading, just without the title. I once watched a junior employee transform her career through pure application of Law 34. She was technically skilled but overlooked. Then something shifted. She started dressing more formally. She began speaking up in meetings with calm authority instead of hedging everything with "I think maybe." She started sending emails to senior leadership with insights and suggestions instead of waiting to be asked. She walked differently, sat differently, even her handwriting became more decisive. Within 6 months, she was promoted twice. Her actual skills hadn't dramatically improved. But her self-presentation had completely transformed, and everyone responded to the new signals she was sending. This is the secret that separates those who rise from those who stagnate. The rising ones act like they've already arrived. They embody the next level before they reach it. They don't wait for permission or validation. They simply begin operating at a higher standard and force the world to catch up to their self-assessment. This sounds arrogant, and it is. But it works because human social dynamics reward confidence and punish hesitation. This brings us to one of the most important aspects of Law 34, the importance of consistency. You cannot be royal sometimes and common other times. The performance must be constant. Kings don't have off days where they act like peasants. They maintain their dignity and bearing in all circumstances. This is exhausting, which is why so few people successfully apply this law. It requires perpetual self-monitoring and self-control. You must always be on. The moment you slip, the illusion can shatter. Consider the downfall of leaders who violated this principle. Richard Nixon resigned in disgrace partly because he was caught on tape sounding petty, insecure, and crude. The mystique of the presidency evaporated when people heard him as he really was. Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky damaged him not just because of the sex but because presidents are supposed to be above such base behavior. The performance of dignity was broken. In both cases, the powerful were revealed as ordinary men with ordinary weaknesses, and their authority suffered accordingly. Let me share another crucial dimension of this law: strategic distance. Kings don't mingle extensively with commoners. They maintain separation that reinforces their special status. This doesn't mean being cold or aloof in every situation. It means being selective about your accessibility. The person who's always available, always accommodating, always eager to please appears desperate and low status. The person who's selective with their time and attention appears valuable and high status. This is why playing hard to get works in dating. The person who's too eager seems desperate. The person who's somewhat unavailable seems desirable. It's the same in professional contexts. The consultant who's always available seems unsuccessful. The consultant who's booked months in advance seems in demand. The difference is often just presentation and scheduling, not actual quality. But the market can't distinguish, so it uses availability as a proxy for value. The scarcer you make yourself, the more valuable you appear. Now let's talk about how this law operates in social situations, because status is constantly being negotiated in every interaction. Watch how people position themselves in a conversation. The high-status person speaks more, gets interrupted less, has others orient toward them. The low-status person speaks less, gets interrupted frequently, orients toward others. These dynamics happen unconsciously but they're powerful. And you can consciously influence them by how you carry yourself. The person applying Law 34 doesn't compete for attention. They assume attention is theirs by right. They speak when they have something to say, with full expectation of being heard. They don't raise their voice or talk over others. They simply project a quiet certainty that when they speak, it matters. This creates a gravitational pull where others naturally orient toward them. They're not dominating through force. They're leading through presence. Or consider body language. The royal posture is upright but relaxed. Shoulders back, chin level, movements deliberate and economical. This is the opposite of the common person who slouches, fidgets, makes nervous movements. The body language communicates, I am comfortable in my own skin. I belong here. I have nothing to prove. This creates an impression of natural authority. People read your body before they process your words. If your body says, I am small and apologetic, your words won't matter. If your body says, I am confident and deserve space, people will give you that space. Let's examine the role of appearance in this law, because while inner confidence is crucial, external presentation amplifies it enormously. Kings wear crowns and robes. Modern royals dress impeccably. This isn't vanity. It's strategy. Appearance is communication. What you wear tells the world how to treat you. If you dress carelessly, you're communicating that you don't value yourself highly. If you dress with care and quality, you're communicating self-respect and status. This doesn't mean expensive clothes necessarily. It means clothes that fit well, are clean and pressed, and are appropriate for the context while slightly exceeding its standards. The person who shows up to a business casual workplace in a tailored suit isn't overdressed. They're claiming higher status. They're saying I operate at a level above this environment's baseline. And people respond by treating them as though they do operate at that level. The clothes become a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's also the matter of grooming and personal maintenance. Royalty is always impeccably groomed. Hair styled, nails clean, shoes polished. This level of care communicates, I have my life together. I pay attention to details. I respect myself and those around me enough to present well. The person who looks disheveled communicates the opposite. It's not about conventional beauty. It's about the visible investment you make in your own presentation. That investment signals how much you value yourself, which tells others how much they should value you. Now we need to address a crucial aspect, the voice. How you sound matters as much as how you look. Kings speak with measured pace, moderate volume, and downward inflection that conveys certainty rather than questions. Their voices are instruments of authority. They don't rush their words. They don't uptalk, turning statements into questions with rising inflection. They don't fill silence with and They're comfortable with pauses, which actually makes people pay more attention. Compare this to low-status speech patterns, rapid, soft, questioning, filled with hedges and qualifiers. I sort of think maybe we could possibly try this approach if that's okay, versus we should take this approach. The second statement claims authority. The first begs for approval. If you want to be treated like royalty, you must sound like royalty. This means speaking more slowly, more clearly, with more certainty, even when you're not entirely certain. The performance of confidence creates actual confidence in others that you're worth listening to. Let me tell you about another historical figure who mastered this law despite enormous disadvantages. Eleanor Roosevelt was painfully shy, not conventionally attractive, and lived in the shadow of her famous husband. But she developed a presence that commanded respect independently. She stood tall despite being self-conscious about her height. She spoke clearly despite her high voice and nervous tendency. She maintained dignity in all circumstances despite personal humiliations. She carried herself like a queen, and eventually, the world treated her like one. She became one of the most respected women in American history through sheer force of self-presentation combined with genuine substance. This raises an important point. Law 34 works best when combined with real competence. The pure con artist who's all performance and no substance eventually gets exposed. But the competent person who adds royal self-presentation to genuine skill becomes unstoppable. The combination of actual ability and royal bearing is what creates legends. You need both. The performance without substance is fragile. The substance without performance is invisible. Together, they create undeniable power. Now let's examine how this law operates in competitive situations. When you're negotiating, interviewing, or competing for something, royal bearing gives you enormous advantage. The person who enters a negotiation acting like they're doing the other party a favor by being there has already won half the battle. They're negotiating from a frame of abundance and superiority. The person who enters grateful for the opportunity has lost before speaking. Their body language and tone communicate desperation, which invites exploitation. This is why you should never appear too eager for anything. Jobs, relationships, opportunities, the more you want them, the less you should show it. The royal appears slightly indifferent, as though they have many options and are simply evaluating whether this particular option is worthy of their attention. This creates scarcity value. The interviewer thinks, this person has options, we need to impress them, not just be impressed by them. The dynamic shifts from you selling yourself to them selling the opportunity to you. Let's talk about how to handle mistakes and failures while maintaining royal bearing, because everyone fails sometimes. The difference is in how you carry yourself afterward. The common person apologizes excessively, makes excuses, or becomes defensive. The royal acknowledges the error briefly and moves forward with confidence. They don't dwell. They don't grovel. They maintain their composure and dignity even in adversity. This actually increases respect because it demonstrates strength of character. Winston Churchill lost elections, made catastrophic military decisions, and faced constant criticism. But he never appeared diminished. He maintained his theatrical style, his quotable speeches, his confidence in his own judgment. When wrong, he acknowledged it without self-flagellation and continued forward. This royal bearing in the face of failure is what made him a wartime leader when Britain needed one. People trusted his strength because he never showed weakness even when he had reason to. This brings us to the concept of strategic generosity. Kings are known for largesse, for grand gestures. They don't nickel and dime. When they give impressively. This reinforces their status as people with abundance who can afford to be generous. The person who's always calculating costs and splitting bills down to the penny appears small. The person who picks up the check, tips generously, gives without tracking returns appears royal. This doesn't mean being fiscally irresponsible. It means being strategically generous in visible ways that reinforce your image. There's also the matter of how you treat people of lower status. Kings can be gracious to servants because they're so secure in their position that kindness doesn't threaten it. The insecure person is often rude to waiters, assistants, and others they see as beneath them because they're trying desperately to assert superiority. The truly confident person is courteous to everyone, which paradoxically reinforces their high status. They're secure enough to be kind. This graciousness is itself a form of power. Now let's examine the dark side of this law, because like all power principles, it can be abused. Some people use royal bearing to mask complete incompetence. They're pure performance with nothing behind it. They abuse those below them while fawning over those above. They take credit for others' work while deflecting blame for their failures. These people often rise temporarily through sheer audacity, but their emptiness eventually gets exposed. The law works best when royal bearing reflects genuine inner worth, not when it's pure facade. There's also the risk of becoming isolated. True royalty historically lived in bubbles, surrounded by sycophants, disconnected from reality. If you're too committed to maintaining your image, you might miss important feedback. You might become unable to learn because learning requires admitting ignorance. You might lose genuine relationships because everyone's managing your image instead of connecting with you authentically. The performance can become a prison if you're not careful. Let me share a modern example that demonstrates both the power and the pitfalls of this law. Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes cultivated a Steve Jobs-like persona: black turtlenecks, intense stare, artificially deep voice, absolute certainty. She carried herself like a visionary changing the world. Investors gave her hundreds of millions. Media called her the next great entrepreneur. The royal performance worked spectacularly until the technology didn't. When investigations revealed her company's blood testing technology was fake, the performance collapsed. But the performance got her further with nothing than most people get with something real. This raises the ethical question: is using Law 34 fundamentally deceptive? Are you lying by acting more confident and worthy than you feel? The answer depends on your relationship to the performance. If you're consciously faking qualities you don't have and using the performance to exploit others, that's deception. If you're embodying qualities you're developing, projecting the person you're becoming while working to make it real, that's aspiration. The line between them is intention and follow-through. The ethical application of Law 34 is to act slightly ahead of where you are, creating a gravitational pull toward your aspirational self. You carry yourself like the person you're becoming, which helps you become that person. You're not claiming achievements you haven't earned. You're claiming the bearing and presence of someone who will earn those achievements. This isn't lying. It's leading yourself toward your potential through embodied practice. Now let's talk about how different cultures interpret royal bearing differently. In some cultures, the royal is loud and commanding. In others, royal is quiet and understated. In some, it's flashy displays of wealth. In others, it's refined minimalism. The specific manifestation varies, but the underlying principle is the same: projecting an aura of specialness that makes others instinctively defer. You need to calibrate your royal bearing to your cultural context while maintaining the core principle of unshakable self-respect. Consider Japanese culture, where status is often communicated through restraint rather than display. The most respected person might say the least, move the most economically, show the least emotion. Their power is in their stillness. Compare this to American culture, where power is often demonstrated through space occupation, volume, and assertiveness. The Royal Texan businessman and the Royal Japanese executive would look completely different, but both would command their contexts through culturally appropriate displays of status. Let's examine how gender affects the application of this law, because women face different expectations around authority and presence. A man who acts with confidence is seen as a leader. A woman who acts the same way might be called aggressive or arrogant. This isn't fair, but it's reality. Women applying Law 34 must navigate additional complexity. They need to project authority while managing gender stereotypes that punish female confidence. The solution isn't to be less royal. It's to be royal in ways that work within your constraints while pushing them. Many powerful women find success with what's called tempered radicalness, projecting confidence and authority while strategically accommodating some traditional expectations. It's a tightrope walk that men don't have to do. But women who master it command respect while gradually shifting what's acceptable. They're royal in their own fashion, which is exactly what the law requires. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Doesn't all this emphasis on image and performance seem superficial? Shouldn't substance matter more than style? In an ideal world, yes. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where humans make rapid judgments based on limited information. Where first impressions stick. Where the person who looks and acts like a leader gets leadership opportunities while the person who doesn't remains overlooked regardless of talent. You can rail against this reality or you can work within it. Law 34 is about working within reality as it exists. It's not saying substance doesn't matter. It's saying that substance without effective presentation is invisible and therefore useless. The hermit genius who refuses to package their ideas in accessible, compelling ways might as well not exist. Their brilliance dies with them. The person who combines substance with stellar presentation changes the world. That's not superficial. That's effective. Let me tell you about one more historical example that brings this all together: Cleopatra. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in Egypt. She wasn't the most militarily powerful. But she commanded Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, the two most powerful men in the world, through sheer force of presence. She understood theater. Her famous arrival to meet Mark Antony, sailing up the Nile on a golden barge dressed as Aphrodite, was pure performance. But that performance secured a military alliance that preserved Egypt's independence for decades. Cleopatra was playing to Law 34 at the highest level. She created spectacles that reinforced her image as a living goddess. She spoke multiple languages, showing intellectual superiority. She controlled access to herself, making her presence valuable. She combined genuine capability with overwhelming presentation. The result was that men with armies deferred to a woman with no military power because she projected an aura of being special that they couldn't resist. The performance created political reality. Now let's talk about maintaining royal bearing during adversity, because this is where the law is truly tested. Anyone can act confident when things are going well. The real test is maintaining your composure and dignity when facing challenges, criticism, or failure. The royal doesn't panic. They don't become frantic or desperate. They maintain steady presence even in storms. This is perhaps the most powerful aspect of royal bearing because it demonstrates unshakable self-belief. Think about how Queen Elizabeth II maintained composure during the multiple scandals that rocked the British monarchy. She never appeared flustered. She maintained her formal bearing, her measured responses, her dignity. Whether this was authentic or performance doesn't matter. The consistency of the performance maintained the institution's authority through crises that could have destroyed it. Her refusal to break character, to show weakness or doubt, was itself a form of power that stabilized an entire nation. This brings us to an advanced application of the law, using royal bearing to create reality rather than just reflect it. When you carry yourself like success is inevitable, like your vision will manifest, like your goals are already accomplished in your mind, something interesting happens. Other people start believing it too. Your certainty becomes contagious. People want to be part of what they perceive as a winning team. Your royal performance attracts resources, opportunities, and allies that make the performance real. This is how many great leaders operate. They project absolute confidence in a vision that doesn't yet exist. They carry themselves like they've already succeeded. This attracts believers who contribute to making the vision real. The performance precedes and creates the reality. Think of how Jeff Bezos acted like Amazon was going to dominate retail long before it did. His royal certainty about the future he was creating attracted investors, employees, and partners who helped make that future real. The performance was the foundation of the reality. Let's examine one final dimension, the relationship between royal bearing and vulnerability. At first glance, these seem contradictory. Isn't vulnerability the opposite of the controlled, dignified presentation of royalty? Not necessarily. The most powerful form of royal bearing includes strategic vulnerability. The king who can admit uncertainty while maintaining overall confidence. The leader who can show emotion while maintaining composure. This combination is incredibly powerful because it's authentic authority rather than brittle facade. Think of how Nelson Mandela carried himself. He had royal bearing, dignity, presence, measured speech. But he also showed vulnerability, his capacity for forgiveness, his willingness to admit past mistakes, his emotional connection to his people. This combination made him more powerful, not less. He was royal in his bearing but human in his heart. This is the ultimate mastery of Law 34, projecting strength and specialness while remaining connected to common humanity. So what do you do with this knowledge? This is the question you should be grappling with now. Because once you understand Law 34, once you see how thoroughly status and respect are performances that you can choose to give, you face a decision. Do you step into your own royalty? Do you claim the respect you want instead of waiting for it to be granted? Do you carry yourself like you're special even before you've proven you're special? This is terrifying for most people. It feels like hubris. What if you act royal and people laugh? What if you project confidence and get rejected? What if you claim status and people challenge you? These fears keep most people playing small. They wait for permission to be great. They hide their light until someone else validates it. They perform humility and self-deprecation to avoid the risk of appearing arrogant. And they remain invisible and unremarkable as a result. The person who masters Law 34 accepts the risk. They would rather be criticized for arrogance than ignored for timidity. They understand that the world is full of mediocre people who succeeded through confidence and brilliant people who failed through self-doubt. So they choose confidence. They choose to be royal in their own fashion. They claim the throne even if they have to build it themselves first. And the world, more often than not, accepts the claim and treats them accordingly. But here's the final insight that makes all of this practical rather than just theoretical: you don't have to transform overnight. Royal bearing can be developed incrementally. Start small. Stand a little taller. Speak a little slower. Make a little more eye contact. Dress a little better. Pause before responding instead of rushing to fill silence. Each small change in how you carry yourself sends different signals to the world. And the world will respond differently, which will reinforce your new behaviors, creating a positive feedback loop. The key is consistency and gradual escalation. You're not lying about who you are. You're growing into who you're becoming. Each day, you embody slightly more of the royal presence you're cultivating. Over time, the performance becomes genuine. The act becomes reality. You're not pretending to be confident anymore. You are confident because you've practiced confidence until it became your nature. This is the true power of Law 34. It's not about faking it. It's about becoming it through embodied practice. This is Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion, act like a king to be treated like one. Master it, and you can command respect regardless of your actual circumstances. Understand it, and you can see through the performances of others while perfecting your own. Ignore it, and you'll be puzzled why less capable but more confident people keep getting opportunities you deserve. Because in the end, people don't treat you based on your objective worth. They treat you based on the worth you claim for yourself through every word, gesture, and choice you make. Welcome to the uncomfortable truth that respect is taken, not given. Welcome to the recognition that authority is performed before it's real. What you do with this knowledge, how you carry yourself from this moment forward, whether you step into your own royalty or remain in false humility, these choices will determine not just how others see you but how you see yourself. The crown you seek is already yours. You simply need the courage to place it on your own head and carry it like you were born wearing it. The kingdom awaits its rightful ruler. That ruler is you. Claim your throne.